All right, Internet, welcome back. Welcome back, part two, day two. And we're just magnetizing right now. So I'm trying a slightly different technique that I haven't really used before. This is kind of going awry. I wanted to kind of practice some things out. But I'm also trying something a little new. So sometimes that's what happens. So, first thing that happened, just to let you in on what's going on, is I was using these magnets that are a little too big and they just don't quite fit in the holes. But I couldn't find my other magnets. I was getting frustrated, so I decided to give it a try, but it just didn't really work. Um, because with them not fitting all the way in, you're going to have to countersink somehow and have them sort of behind. It just was becoming a hassle and a pain. So I've thrown another smaller magnet because I did find them. I did find my smaller size magnets. So we've got that. We've got that going in there. So we've got this sort of working. So hopefully we'll be able to sort of salvage this. But a lot of times, what I will do is I will, when I'm trying to magnetize a bigger hole or something like that, I'll actually take a piece of sprue and I'll clip it off. Actually, I'll take something like this, some nice clean piece of sprue, and cut it off to fit in there, and then glue it in there, and kind of glue the magnets to the piece of sprue that's inside there, and then I can use plastic glue and get the positioning just right, and then put the one on the other side. Because it's sometimes it can be a little faster than waiting for green stuff to set. But anyway, we're trying this today. We'll see how it goes. I'm also, if you'll notice, I've got a couple little bumps here. I'm going to try to use those essentially as registration marks. So once this is completely dry, I'm going to take the green stuff on the other side and I'll put a magnet on here, and then I'll put the green stuff on the arm. And then, speaking of which, we actually sort of have a registration mark already. I'm glad I tried this. So there we go. So now I got that in there. So that's going to be even more fun with that magnet. So anywho, I mean, it is what it is. It's just going to be a bit of a mess. So hopefully the magnets will glue in there, because what will happen is I'll put the other magnet on top, and then we'll put this into fit. In fact, I could even put that magnet on right now just to make sure that it stays, and I've got room to put it on. So we'll leave that like that. And then once the green stuff sets, we'll peel that off. If the other one inside there comes out, that's fine, because then we can actually super glue it in. And if it doesn't come out, then that's fine, because it's not coming out. So we're just going to essentially be doing the same thing on the other side. So I started getting this one going, just mashing a bunch of green stuff. And yeah, we're just kind of making some room. So yeah, these videos, they're going to be just a little longer is kind of what it's going to be. I need to make sure that everything still fits so that I didn't get any green stuff in the way that's going to prevent this from going in the way we want. Like especially right there, that could be a little tight. So, but it's nice. It's a good thing that I didn't put this together, because then I can get behind there and kind of work it. Put that thing down, flip it, and reverse it. So I want to make sure my polarity is right. It doesn't really matter, but I kind of, the OCD in me wants the polarity to be the same on both sides. So all right, so we'll put this in like so. And then we can kind of push up from behind. And I probably used a little more green stuff than I needed here, but what are you going to do? Push that in, push the green stuff out, push that in, get it nice and flush. And then I really want to kind of push the green stuff out on the outside. And I figured the reason I'm doing it this way is because more arms are going to fit. It's one body and then multiple arms. I really want to get the body set first, as opposed to doing like an arm and then setting the body and then having to wait to finish the other arms. So because of that, I also feel like having a push out like this is going to be easier to set than having it sort of like recessed in. So that's sort of the reason why I'm bubbling it out instead of making sort of like the opposite registration mark, dipping in. So we'll do that. We'll push it out on the other side, push the magnet in. And we're just using one of my favorite dental tools for this part, for the green stuff sculpting. I do a lot of green stuff sculpting with this particular tool. This is probably like my most used tool. Because it's round, you can get things nice and flat. It's got different, it's a little bit, the round on that part is different than the rounding on that part versus the rounding on that part. So it kind of gives me a lot of different ways I can shape and mold the green stuff. Yep. All right, so we got something like that, and it doesn't need to be perfect, right? Just whatever it is. The reason I'm putting them there, I don't know if I actually said, the reason I'm putting them there is sometimes when you magnetize, especially big heavy things, it has a tendency to do something like this. Like you put it in like this, and then the weight of it just goes brrr. So without anything to sort of like catch it, like this one had that, so this actually should be fine. But where's my other arm? This one, for example, doesn't have anything like that. So when I go to put this on, I guess it's got this on the outside, so it might not be too bad. But having a couple dips like that, I think will really keep the magnets from rotating. So it really doesn't need to be perfectly flush because, I'm going to put a magnet on there and then push the green stuff in and make sure it's a snug fit. So it really won't matter too much. In fact, if it's not snug all the way, then the other magnet's recessed in a little bit. That might even just give it a little bit more extra hold to keep it from twisting. So anyway, we got that, so that's good, and that's good. Let's double check this one more time because green stuff has, especially with a magnet in it, has a tendency to sort of like slide around a little bit. In fact, I might even just leave that in, but I don't actually want to leave that in. Whoops. And I forgot, green stuff sticks to stuff unless you get it lubed up with something, so I'm gonna lick it. I mean, you don't have to lick it, that's just what I do. You probably should use water or like Vaseline or something like that, but if you've watched my channel, some of my older videos, I'm a tool licker. I'm a green stuff licker. It just is what it is. Some people lick their brushes. I'm not a brush licker, but I do lick the green stuff. So, I have to step up for 1 second and grab something. This may or may not go horribly, but I want to use this for some other green stuff in that we're going to do. So I was going to keep doing some building, but it kind of got the green stuff out for the magnetizing, and I just kind of got the bug to do some green stuff. And so this is, I forget what it is, some sort of gauge wire. It's meant for, I got it at like Home Depot or Lowe's, and it's meant for tying, I think, gutters up or helping tie them up. But I got it mainly as like an armature type thing. So I'm not sure how much I'm going to need, but obviously I've got like a ton here. I'll never use all that. These are some generic cheapo Leatherman multi-tools, and it did work without destroying my tool. I was afraid like when I tried to do that, this thing would just break because it's like an old crap one. You can see it's all got paint on it, and it just gets abused. So we'll throw that to the side. So what we want to do is I want to have a tentacle. So he's going to have a tentacle instead of a hand. So we're going to kind of use this as our inspiration as well for figuring out how we're going to sculpt this. So that's what we're going to do a little bit of today, Internet. So what I probably should do, and what I am going to do, plastic glue, check. Sprue, check. Where is my, here you are. So we're just going to glue a piece of sprue in there with a hole in it to kind of glue the armature in. So just glue a little, drill a little hole there, and then I'm not going to be able to find my other bits. Maybe I will. We're just going to rummage through a box over here. Don't mind me, Internet. Yeah, I don't know where my larger drill bit is, so this is probably going to be a bit of a mess. Well, let's try this. So we're just going to take this and we're just going to make it bigger on one side. And it will obviously be way too big on one side if I went all the way through. So we're going to do it a little bit on one side and a little bit on the other, and then hopefully we can wedge it through, and that will actually make it stick really well. So we're not going too crazy. This thing just rips through plastic too, so you don't have to push very hard or twist very much to do that. So all right, we got to go a little bit more, but if we do it just a little bit at a time, then we won't overshoot it, hopefully. But I also don't want to destroy the sprue, but I've also got obviously plenty of pieces of sprue. So I'm in no shortage of little sprue chunks like this to try and wedge this and jam this through. That's close. Because I do kind of want to get it to jam through and then have it be stuck. That's sort of the goal. So we'll go a little bit more. And depending on how you twist that, you can twist that just a little bit and you can see it's even making sort of a little bit more of a square hole and kind of shape it a little, or carve off just one side. Ooh. And that did not go into my finger. Sweet. So that's what we want. That's what we're looking for there, internets. We'll put a little extra in, and then, so we see that. And in fact, since I'm going to be sculpting here, I don't actually really need it to fit right in there. So what we're going to do is just clip off just a little bit. Just a bit outside. Couldn't find these. I'm not sure if they were in frame and you could see them the whole time, so I just want to eyeball it. This doesn't need to be exact. Exact science is not an exact science. What is that from? It's from a movie. I don't remember. Someone will tell me. So we'll do something like that. And just to make sure it doesn't get in the way of whatever I'm trying to sculpt, that corner might have been a little high. So if I do something like that, that should be fine. So let's just jam some plastic glue all over it and weld this bad boy together. So plastic glue. Now what I probably should do, and what I might actually do, is hit this up with some hot glue as well. Because hot glue is great for something like this because it's going to set, you know, really quick. Whoops, goes this way. So I'm just looking for something like that. Something just to take hold. Just a bit outside. That was from Wild Things, Major League, where Wild Thing, Charlie Sheen's character, pitches and he doesn't want to wear his glasses because he wants to look cool, and then just throws, like, I don't even remember where the pitch goes, but like it's way off, and the announcer's like, just a bit outside. There we go, internet, we got it. Okay. And plastic glue, when it starts melting, and it will, especially like on this side where it was a little thinner where I clipped it, it will kind of like bend, and you can kind of almost like mold it a little bit in there. So we'll give that a second to set, because what I also wanted to show you was essentially sort of like carving and sculpting with just the plastic itself. So remember I told you I was going to take this nose ring off. So let's just have at it. Let's just start clipping and hacking. So I'm going to use the flat side, and we're just going to trim the top of this little nose off. Nose ring. And we're going to try to clip off most of it, because these clippers will help us get flush. Looks like I'm pulling a nose hair from him. Should we just leave it like that? Ew, he's got a booger. I know Trevor in particular. What up, Trevor? Buddy of mine. Gets sort of nervous when I talk about how I just like go clipping in and hacking at really expensive models, or just even any model really, but in particular something like this. And we're not doing any major hacking, but we're gonna use a seam scraper to sort of scrape that off and get it smooth. And then there's a specific name for that little dip above your lip. Philtrum, something like that. Looks like we're picking boogers out. If you're sitting on that fuzzy duffel bag, don't be flicking boogers on it. Now that's a real deep cut. I don't think anybody's going to get that. But if you do, one, you're probably old. And two, we might have just become best friends. Only because, again, that's a deep cut of a reference. So I'm not telling you what that one is. I know what it is. Maybe I'll tell you in a little bit. I'll give you a chance to guess. So if you're going to guess or you think you know what it is, drop it in the comments below. And don't cheat. Drop it in the comments before I tell you what it is. So we're just scraping things off here, just to get rid of that stupid nose ring that I just don't like. And I mean, even if I just stop there once I paint it, it's going to be fine. You guys are getting the dramatic shadow. Can we turn these lights up here so you can see the other side? So anybody else think the nose ring is dumb that saw this? Every time I saw the pictures of it painted, I thought, you know, a lot of times when you see Games Workshop models, they can be kind of polarizing. You'll see it and you'll be like, that's the dumbest thing ever. I think the one that stands out to me the most is the Mournfang Cavalry for the Ogre Maw tribes, way back when they were Ogre Kingdoms in 8th edition when that book came out. or when those models came out. The Ogre Kingdoms book came out in 6th edition, but I digress. But anyway, those models, they were like, the ogres were sitting like really silly high on them. So when everybody sees the pictures, they're like, oh, these models are dumb. And I just bumped the camera, and you're on like a wobbly tripod stand. It's not really a tripod, it's clipped to the desk. You know what we could do? So this is kind of something interesting. So anyway, what I was going to say about the Beastclaw Raiders before I get too far off tangent is they just look dumb. Kind of in the pictures, everybody thought they looked dumb. And then you see them in person, and you're like, actually, no, these models are pretty kick-ass. But this just still didn't look good in person. So, but then on the other tangent I was about to go off on, sometimes when you're doing things, stuff just happens, and roll with it. So I haven't like gone too far or anything like this, but I think it would actually look really cool with like a bit of a scar in his lip. So since we're kind of talking about carving green stuff, I'm actually just going to do that. I'm just going to like use the side of this to kind of wedge in and just sort of like wedge out a little like scar on his lip. I think that's going to look cool. Like when we paint it up. Look cooler than a nose ring. Scars are just nose rings and piercings with better stories. I mean, it's specifically about tattoos and scars, but anyway. We'll just give him a little bit of a scar. So we'll take our time with this, right? I'm not rushing it. Despite having an audience, maybe not. But this is probably what this whole experience is going to be. Again, more of like a vlog style. So now I'm just kind of scraping down as opposed to trying to carve out. And I'm using a different microphone. So in my last video, there were 2 parts. There was the unboxing, and then there was the building with Oliver. And then there was the part where I kind of had some of the sub-assembly done. And I switched to a better microphone. And not using the iPhone mic, which I'm using now. And I think part of what I was worried about with that too is doing all this, blowing all the dust and stuff off from scraping, was going to be really loud in that iPhone camera. But the other mic that I'm using, I think, does a better job. So, because it's a little further away and directional. So let's do a 2 zoom, which is going to be more detailed than you would ever see in person. Zoom. And I can actually see some detail that I don't see in person. So we'll just clean that up there. We can actually just take this and twist it a little, try and make it a little nostril. Yeah, I think that's awesome. I think that's a lot better than what we had before, right? So looking at it back here, a little closer to what you would actually see. Let's zoom out. Try not to hit the stop button. Zoom. Try not to shake the camera too much. All right, so there we go. Rad. All right, I dig it. Let's see how this is doing. That's definitely in there much better. So I think that might be enough for me to do what I want. So I think it's, firm enough for me to do what I want. So if we put this on, and that doesn't go on without putting this on first, Tim. So he's looking like that. I just want to get an idea of what we're dealing with. So do we want the tentacle like whipping behind? I think we do. So this is sort of like the angle that I'm working at. So I'm just going to kind of hold it like this for a second, and we're going to ruin the glue job that we just did. Great. That's okay. It's plastic glue. So he's going to kind of be whipping it. This. All right, we're gonna heat up the hot glue gun. Don't go away, internet. I'm just over here. All right, we gotta get under the desk. We'll plug this in. Alright. I don't really like to edit, if you haven't noticed. I feel like I'm all the time saying, if you follow my channel, but if you follow my channel, you know I don't like to edit. So we're just going to get this going. This is high, like a 2-temp glue gun, and then these glue sticks are good for either high or low. And I always have it on high when it heats up faster, and I just feel like I can get it in there better. So we'll set you over there. Alright, so we're trying to do I kind of want it whipping back. But like an octopus tentacle should kind of like twist both ways. You don't want to just like a linear twist. You want to have it kind of be dynamic. So don't just go whoop or even go whoop, whoop, whoop. You want to kind of like go down and up and around. So you have some like dynamicism. Dynamicism, is that a word? If not, it is now. All right, so I kind of wanted the tentacle. I'm a little torn. I had kind of wanted the tentacle holding even something that looked like a ship mast. I thought would be cool, and then I realized, hey, this is almost like a ship mast kind of looking thing with a trebuchet on it. So I was like, would the octopus tentacle be like cool holding onto this thing? Like swinging that thing. I'm definitely not going to use this hand, so let's just get right in there and hack at it, right? Let's just do it, internet. I'm going to use the clippers, the flat side. It's just be easier to drill and pin. I'm not really too worried about salvaging either side because we're going to like sculpt over it. But that'll just be easier to pin and manage. So let's just get in there and hack at it. Sometimes that's just what you do. You just hack at it. You can't be afraid to go in there and get it done. So let's just hack up a bone grinder. All right, so we're gonna have something like that. When this is all said and done, do I like how this is gonna look? So we're gonna have something like that. Is that gonna do it for me? We want to bend this. I don't mind that twist, but I want it bent a little further back this way. So we're gonna use that to sort of get it going. Before we give him a cool tentacle. And then I need to drop this down. How about you? Well, that just happened. Well, we'll just do it like this. We don't really need those other parts anymore. All right, so something like that. I'm just trying to picture this in my head, so you gotta give me a second. I do want this a little straighter coming out. Coming out a little straighter. Coming up this way. Will that do it? Will that be kind of what we're looking for? I think this is just a little too long too, but that's okay. We can clip off the extra. It still needs to go. I want it to go down a little bit more and then come back up, which is sort of where we were, but let's round this a little bit more. Can we work with that? Get a good coil at the end. There, I think that'll work. How's my glue gun doing? Oh, you're good. Do I have that in frame? Not really. Sorry, we're just jamming a little hot glue in there. We'll clean up the mess, and in fact, I'm just gonna Hit it up a little bit in the back. Grab the other glue stick for a reason. Bump the camera with the glue stick. Oh, ooh, yep. Well, we filled it. We filled it, internet. Let's unplug this. I didn't think that much glue was coming out, but it came out. So, oh no, it didn't fill. It's sinking down in there now. Oh, it's getting warm too, which is what we want. I just want to make sure there's really good glue in there. Cool. So we can clean all this up. So there we go. Oh yeah, you're hot. I mean, it's hot glue, right? Duh, it's hot. But yeah, it's hot. Okay. So that should hopefully hold that together a little bit more so I can start doing what we need to do. So we'll give that a second to cool off because we also need to mix up a whole bunch of green stuff. I'm probably not really actually going to be able to sculpt the tentacle right now because we're going to need something to really kind of bind to. So I'm going to want to get some green stuff around it so that I can then have something sculpt without it sliding around. Because if I try to start sculpting on here, I'm just going to be like pushing it off. So let's start fleshing it out though. We got our green stuff here. How much do we think we're going to need? So if you've heard my tip on green stuff, take half of what you think you need and then whatever you have, divide that in half again. And that's how much you probably need. You will almost always be cutting off way more green stuff than you need. So where did my X-Acto knife go? Well, I'll just use, I just need something to, I'm just scoring the green stuff in there because then it gives me a clean break as opposed to trying to tear it off with my hands. So some green stuff, world green stuff, I believe. I got this. This will last a long time. I had the tubes, like the green plus yellow from I think Gale Force 9. And while you got a lot of it, the thing I didn't like with that is it was a lot harder to mix even amounts. This, you just cut it off and then you mix it and you're good to go. And whatever they do in the middle here, it doesn't have any sort of like any hard stuff in the middle. I don't know what sort of magic they do. I got this other stuff, this brown stuff, and they actually do this stuff. You can get it with a gap in between so that it doesn't contact and start curing on that line. So, but we're just gonna mix this up. Mixing it up takes a minute, so yeah, so while we're mixing it up, I probably should get the book out and open up a page and maybe talk about some rules and things and kind of my thoughts on the army overall. But yeah, so we can still talk about the book and the army maybe for a minute. So if you made it this far and you want to get into a little bit of the, you know, the meta and the talking about the rules and stuff, let's do that. So the book as a whole, I think, is going to be a lot of fun. I think with smaller model counts, especially for narrative players, you can kind of really get into your models, right? So, you know, this right here, this is Chuck Short Rib, aka the Beef Slinger, aka Sirloin. You know, maybe Sirloin was already used in Aqua Teen Hunger Force, but you know, what are we gonna do? But so we can kind of have some character and have some fun with our models. But I think with any book, to be honest, unless you're playing like ultimate top tier on the top tables against top opponents, you can play a game and win on skill, on player skill, and overcome any shortcomings with the list. Knowing your list and knowing its strengths and weaknesses, and man, this light is like, I really got to have the focus on me or that light just washes everything out, huh? But I don't know if you actually really want to see just my hands mashing up green stuff. Here, let's have those guys. Can we zoom in on them and just enjoy Chuck Short Rib while I mix up some green stuff for a second? So old Chucky Short Rib down there, swinging his cattle, the Beef Slinger. I think he can overcome a lot of things. So one of the podcasts that I listen to and quite enjoy the most, and probably the one I'm listening to the most these days, is The Honest Wargamer. Shout out to anybody that's affiliated with those guys or also enjoys them. If you see this, what up? What up, Rob? I think you're a rad dude. I remember you all the way from the Bravery One podcast days before you worked for Games Workshop. Anyway, um, but that's neither here nor there. But one of the things he says is he talks about how terrible bloodthirsters are, and I have what I think is a really really nasty corn list, and I know some people that have played it will agree. And it's a corn list with 3 bloodthirsters. So it's Tyrants of Blood, it's 6 Juggernauts, it's 10 Bloodletters, 2 Slaughter Priests, 5-man, 2 5-mans of Fleshhounds, and then all 3 Judgments. And that list, it just has like answers for everything. I've got Scarbrand as one of the Bloodthirsters who can just wreck face. We've got the Insensate Rage, who can do the 6-inch pylon, which just gives you so many shenaniganeries to really just get you out of trouble and like give you answers to a lot of things. So it was a good answer to Slaanesh, and being outside of like the Locust ability they have, where they were making you strike last. It's a good counter to things that can strike first. It used to be good, like before they FAQ'd Flesh Eater Courts, where they could just attack first. Good against Fire Slayers, where they have the ability to attack first with those big bricks. And then with the Bloodthirster of, Unfettered Fury is the one that likes to pylon, and then Insensate Rage, just the exploding mortal wounds and essentially sniping characters from behind. So you give him the. Although now with the new General's Handbook and not having those items, I'd have to look and see what items I'd give him, because I was always giving him the +1 to hit Amberglaive and the extra 1-inch reach, just so he could swing over the top with his weapon. I think it's only a 2-inch range, and that gave him 3-inch. But the +1 to hit was just ensuring you got more hits through so that you could explode thingies. But anyway, it was a really good list. I wasn't actually planning on talking about Khorne. I wanted to talk about the Gargants, because I think what will happen is as you play this list, there's only a few variations of it, and I think there's actually a fair bit of character you can get out of the different combos, taking the different traits, the different Gargants, and they'll have some slightly different play styles, but overall I think it's going to be a very similar type play style, and just finding the little tweaks and the little items and equipment that really work for you. But I think once you know the army, one of the things I think that happens with a lot of other armies is you chop and change the list, right? So you go and you play Stormcast, and there's like a million different ways you can play Stormcast, right? Most books, other than maybe the Ideneth, who everybody just plays eels. Sorry, not sorry. Something like that. There's just a lot of different builds. So all of a sudden, we're kind of fickle by nature, I think, as wargamers. So we don't play the same list much, right? If you play 3 games with the same list, I feel like for most people, in most circumstances, that's going to be a situation where you feel like you've played that army a lot. It just, with the amount of times we play and the amount of games we get in, that's what I think the majority of people would experience. But with the Khorne list, going back to that for a second, I played essentially that version of that list every time I played that Khorne list, and I've probably done 12 to 15 games with it. And I think I've only lost 1 game, and it was a really kind of poor situation. It was the old Duality of Death against a Death list and the Gash list, where his skeletons needed to run 6 inches on the first turn, and he didn't have a command point because he uses Nagash ability to use the always fail battle shock and all that stuff. But he rolled a 6, so he was able to get on the objective the first turn. And because of that, I couldn't get him off of it. I completely obliterated one side of the board, but couldn't get the skeletons off Duality of Death before he had won the game on points. And that was just, it wasn't even a terrible matchup for me. I think I just played it wrong, and, he got a little bit of the luck on his side. So, and he played it right, not to say like he just got lucky, but, getting the 6-inch run wall in the first turn to make sure he got the objective, because if he hadn't rolled that 6, I would have won the game. So, that's how it goes sometimes. But anyway, so learning how to play a list and playing it over and over, the Gargants, you're not going to be able to make a lot of major changes, right, in terms of how they actually play. So you have different models, it'll do different things, and, this is me talking without any experience. I don't have any games with it, but I don't feel like there's going to be a lot of variation in terms of how the army will play, despite, being able to sort of mix it up. So we're just going to wrap this around here. So I think because of that, players of Sons of Behemat are going to, if you play it a lot, I think you're just going to learn the book, and you're going to be able to get to that higher skill cap, and be able to push games more that maybe someone playing the army for the first time wouldn't get. I think it'll also sort of have a similar play style. So if you're playing the same people, they're going to know how to counter it. So if you're in a situation where everybody plays the same, you play the same people all the time and they get familiar with your list, then you're also going to be sort of on the opposite end of that. So anyway, so we're just mashing this on here for now. And it's really sticking to my fingers. This green stuff that I got is really sticky. But it's, you know, it's not dried out. You keep it wrapped up in something. I keep it in its little container. Oh, we're still way zoomed in. Let's zoom back out a little. There we go. Okay. Yeah, we just want to get it on there. And maybe we can try sculpting a little because it's not really moving around this too much. But what we want is we want something that we're going to be able to put the next layer of green stuff on and have it not stick. And I do want the tentacle to sort of taper towards the end, but I want it to be a big, thick tentacle, so. But this is a little too much green stuff right here, so we're twisting and pulling. And the twisting is going to help because it'll put some little grooves in the green stuff, right? That'll work for our next layer to keep it from moving around. Because that's ultimately what we want. We just don't want a smooth surface. We want something where the green stuff won't push around, where we'll have something to sort of push against and it won't just roll away from us, right? So if I'm trying to sculpt on here, it starts like all of a sudden I'm kind of working like this, and that sort of stuff happens, and we don't want that. So just some of the fun of working with armature. Now, if I had smaller wire, which I do have some smaller wire somewhere, but I don't know where, you can then wrap this wire with some smaller wire, which is normally what most people would do. This is, again, potentially maybe a waste of green stuff, but again, you know, I'm going to need to put something on here and use a bunch of green stuff anyway. So whether I'm sort of doing it all at once. All right, I got to lick my fingers. I'm sorry. Well, sorry, not sorry. But it just was, we were just not getting anywhere. It was just getting too difficult, being too sticky. So, but I don't want too much on there because I want to be able to sculpt over it and have some details. So we might be able to do some, a little bit of sculpting with this though, in the sense of like just trying to get almost like the skeleton of where the tentacle and stuff is going to be. We could probably even do some of that with our hands. So let's just keep pushing this down. And because this is bigger than the wire, obviously we can kind of put more on one side or one on the other side. So we can use this to smooth out our tentacle. Or not our tentacle. Well, yes, our tentacle, but like the curves and the bends in it, right? So I can use this to compensate where maybe some of those bends were a little sharper than I would have wanted. So, and I mean, we're going on 38 minutes here. I know it's kind of like a long video, but this is sort of what the hobby is, and converting and taking the time to do things. It's not a fast process. And you're seeing all this in real time with me. So hopefully you appreciate my particular style and way of doing things, so you can enjoy this video. And if not, you probably didn't watch it for 38 minutes. So peace to the, shout out to the real ones that are still here. So the fuzzy duffel bag thing, that was from a National Lampoon album record back in the day. It was a family of immigrants talking about sort of like their journey and kind of like making it into the United States. And one of their cousins was really hairy, and one of the other guys was always picking their nose and flicking boogers. And then they kept referring to the hairy cousin as a fuzzy duffel bag, thinking like she was just sitting there waiting at like the bus stop or something, and like, oh, that's not a fuzzy duffel bag, that's my cousin, or whatever it was. And I forget where they were immigrating from or what it was. Immigrating. I think that's right. Sometimes words just don't sound right, internet. So, all right. I know it's kind of gross. Sorry. So now we've got something that looks like a smoother tentacle. We'll taper it off a little bit more towards the end. I'm not quite sure how small I'm going to want it, but we'll just push a little bit more down. And something like that. Something like that. So you're going to have a tentacle whipping around. So let's just see. Let's get an idea. So looking at this, right, we can kind of use this as an idea to kind of like figure out how we're going to do our tentacle. We can kind of get some ideas, some of the shapes. So there's some of these little ripples, and we got kind of like a groove on one side, and then getting into sort of like the fleshy bits underneath. So I kind of want the top of the tentacle to be like along his forearm. And then, so let's just use, we'll use this tool. Could really use a bunch of different things right now, but let's just kind of use this to start shaping it and get an idea of what we're going to be looking at. So, and then it'd be cool, I think, to show off some of the tentacles in the front. So let's make the tentacle start to twist. So when we're looking at the model, we'll have some of those little suckers. And being that you sat with me all this long, and I'm not really going to actually be doing real sculpting in this, what we can do is maybe we can try and sculpt this a little bit, even though it's not going to be the finished work, just to get an idea of how we're going to do this. We can even use this as like a test case to sort of like figure out how we're going to do this. So I think that's going to look rad. All right, so it'll go like that. And then, do we want it to twist around? That might be cool, actually. So if we twist it around, because we're going to want the suckers kind of like wrapping around this thing, probably something like that. We'll figure it out when we get there, because we kind of change how it's sculpted once we get this glued on. We can then start playing around with it. So we're not locked into anything really yet when it comes to holding that. And maybe we'll just have like the tentacle whipping around. That might be cooler than trying to, and a lot less work than trying to get something on the end of that. So, but if that goes, we're just kind of looking at it, figure it out. When we know we're going to want the other side like this. And already you can kind of see how it's just kind of like pushing around that wire, right? So like it's hard to sculpt when the whole thing keeps moving away from you. But through that curve, let's bring this in, because that'll look really cool. And this is twisting a little, so let's make sure as well we push our green stuff down into here, so that when it dries, we've got something that we can like really like glue in there. Like if that doesn't really stick, which it probably won't, I can take that out and I can glue it, and then it's in the shape, right? It's essentially molded to whatever's going to be in there, so that if I hit it with some glue, it will really lock in. We'll push in a little extra. All right, so if I grab it down here now, we won't be twisting it off the arm, so we can, it's hard to hold on to there. Come here, you. How about you? That boy needs therapy. Anybody know what that's from? We'll just keep playing that game. We can play that game a lot. I'm good at that game. I say all kinds of random shit and reference random stuff all the time. So see how we're kind of like twisting that tentacle around? Stop focusing on the gargant. My camera just likes Chuck Short. I mean, I like Chuck Short Ribs, so I can't be mad at him. I mean, look at that guy. Beef Supreme. Beef Slinger. Yeah, so let's twist that right around. I kind of feel like it wants to be on the bottom here, and then we'll start twisting it around, something like that. We're just roughing it out so I don't have to have it anywhere near accurate. The other thing though that's going to be nice if I do give that like a little bit of a ripple, which I was going to put some lines in it anyway, to give the green stuff something to stick to. Then we'll have something for the green stuff to stick to. So we'll bring that up. Now the other nice thing that's going to be nice about an octopus arm is it's in a very organic shape, right? So you can get away sculpting like very sharp edges and angles and, you know, industrial type things. Is tough and something I've never really had a lot of success in or tried that much, to be fair, either. Most of the sculpting I've done is on like really gross nurgle stuff, or, you know, muscles and arms, and again other organic stuff where like you're dealing with smoother edges and curves. So how do we feel about that? So the tentacle will come like that. We'll get the little suckers on the bottom there, and then it's going to curl around. That's good. And then we'll have the suction cups on the inside. If we want to have it grabbing something, they'll be, and the suckers will be able to like loop around. So there's a couple different ways I think to go about this. One, we could just take a little, and probably the easiest way is to take little dots of green stuff and then just like push them in, you know. So if I just get a little dot of green stuff, right, really tiny little dot, and we just, let's pretend like this was the finished product. Put that on there. Remember my favorite tool? That's a perfect job for the little pointy end. So if I just like push in the middle and do nothing else, you saw what I did there. Literally nothing. And look at that, that looks great. We can push in a little bit more if we need it. Spin it around, make it a little deeper. Look at that. I don't have to do anything else. I can just do that 100 times and we'll be good to go. So that was just sort of proof of concept. That's what I had planned on doing in my head. The other thing I was thinking I could do, it's going to be a lot more work, but I thought it might give it a more seamless approach, is like to kind of like push the green stuff together, right? Something like that. And then we just do the same thing where we just sort of like push it in the middle. So the benefit of this, you know, this is a little bit more work doing it this way, because then I want to smooth that out, but it kind of gives it some little organic texture around it and makes the little sucker feel like it's more part of the arm. See that? Because it is like all the green stuff's like attached. Whereas this, I have a hunch, if I do it on two pieces of green stuff, like since this piece here is still wet, like if I did this on something that was dry, these would probably fall off and then I'd be gluing them. Or I'd have to put like a little bit of glue, like some really thin super glue around it once it's all cured. But being that these two are both wet, so it's going to leave more of a, like a line around the outside, but that might not look bad. And I think a really thin coat of even super glue just after the fact anyway might help fill that gap just a tiny bit, just so it sort of looks like one piece. But, you know, because see, looking at these here, sort of one piece. And then it's got those little points in the middle. I don't know if I want to do little spikes on it. That might be kind of cool because it is like a kraken. It's supposed to be like sort of like a kraken arm. But essentially that's just what we're going to do over the whole thing. So, but I think we're at a point where we really want to let this dry. So I'm just going to twist this to make sure it's in the right position. And then once that cures, we're going to be ready to start having at it. And green stuff is a little flexible when it's cured, so I may be able to bend this a little bit into shape. So I think we're going to make this a pretty thick arm up front initially, because one, I got a lot of green stuff here and I'm going to want to have at least a little bit of play to be able to put stuff in it. So is there anything else I want to do while it's still wet? I think that's the other thing, like sort of proof of concept, is like, let's look at like the back of this and how this is done. So once I've pushed up on it, here, let's just sculpt a little bit right here. once I've sort of pushed up, as I push it up, it's going to kind of like pucker on the other side anyway. It's going to kind of give me that lip, right? Actually, what's probably a better tool for that is the clay shaper. Here, let's tell the camera to focus right here. And we're just gonna, because this is a little softer, so it's gonna let me get a smoother line underneath here. And then I can kind of push back down the top. And we'll probably just have to push it back and forth a couple times just to get it just right. But now once I push it down, it's gonna make that edge lip a little thinner. And we can even use it sort of like a paintbrush to but it's really sticking. I don't want to like just like spit on it, but sometimes that's what you got to do. All right, so we're just pushing the edge down, pushing with the tip of it, and then it will start to bite into the green stuff a little bit. And then we can just sort of like, and then, so we're going to want some little ups and downs, ups and downs. We'll want to do this after doing our tentacles, but I can just give it a little push down, push up, push down, push up, push down, push up. And maybe I don't even have to do it after the tentacles. It might look kind of cool and organic just doing it on its own. And then let's just push in just a little bit just to hide a little bit more of the seam. Or not the seam, but like the obvious line of where I did that. Look at that. Look at that, internet. That'll look good, huh? If we do that on the whole thing. But then we also want to sort of bring that over the top. And I think for that, we're going to use maybe the pointy side, maybe the rounded side. I'm going to start with the sort of like a long, using this to sort of like drag the tip of it over. But again, this is going to be kind of an organic shape. So, and as we work down, I can kind of like push back on the one that I just did. And I kind of want to go a little too far, because what happens when you're working with these tools is it makes a very obvious imprint of the tool that you're working with. But then if you push it too far and then kind of push it back the other way. So what I'm thinking is, like, in theory, that's a little, not quite the transition point I want right here. I can then kind of round that back down. But we got to be a little bit more deliberate. So let's push in there a little harder on the other one. And then we'll just kind of start smoothing it out. We'll want to keep some of this down here, a little bit of a thing under there. And just one on its own is not really going to tell us the story, so let's do a second one. Push a little too hard, too much, so that we can kind of push it back. That's not too bad. It's not really quite exactly what I'm looking for. Let's go back to this example for reference, but that is kind of what it's like. We got to put a little bit more of the lip on it. Drop our tools. So let's bring this back up. Let's push this back down. Bring them up a little. Bring it down, smooth it out a little. I think I'm just going to want a little bit smoother. Let it, you know, sometimes you just need to be subtle. And again, when you do the whole thing, you know, that's going to give you more of what you're looking for. And then we use this to kind of smooth everything out. That's not too bad. Can you really see it? Let's let the camera focus. Let's zoom in. And you're shaking, sorry. Right, that wouldn't be too bad if we did along the whole thing. And we can kind of really subtly put in a little bit more of a line there. You don't have to push very hard at all when your green stuff is like really still soft like this is. It still isn't anywhere near cured. Bring that one up, bring you down a little, bring you up for the next one. Yeah, I don't think I want to use that round tool. I think it's all about this clay shaper. And just sort of like brushing it down along the top. You can kind of push it up a little too. Just push it. Right, push it a little too far, then we can kind of smooth it out. Yeah, we'll practice this. Once we kind of figure it out, it'll go a lot faster. Once we kind of figure out the technique. Right now we're in the planning and playing stages to figure out how we want to do this. But, oh, and I'm way off camera. I'm sorry, y'all. I'm sorry. And actually, you know, thinking about the bend of this, it's going to point more towards this side. And then it's going to kind of stretch out a little bit more. So we probably want it a little smoother on this side and a little more pronounced here. Right? Off camera again, Tim. I tried a slightly different camera setup here. I've got my camera set up a little bit more to the side. You're seeing a little bit more of an angle. That way I'm not pushing out of the frame as much so that the camera's not in the way of what I'm seeing. So now the camera doesn't obscure my view. But we still have to keep it in the middle, so I still have to look to my right. All right, that's what we're working with. So I don't think that's too bad. It's definitely not perfect, but it's not bad. But I want to get it close to, like, I don't want to say perfect, but like really close to what I want the finished product to be. So we're going to smooth out a little bit more on this side to make the edges a little more pronounced so it's not too much of a pattern. I want it to be kind of organic, so I don't want them to be all exactly the same. But something like that. We didn't really do this side, did we? Something like that might work. Again, if you get too hung up on the details like I often do, you're not going to see like, oh, maybe this just isn't like the right kind of fold that I want in here. Maybe just this little bit I don't want. But when I step back and I've got a whole thing, the thing's all done like that, it'll be good to go. So I think we're going to be all kinds of I think we're going to be going with this technique here. Now it's not autofocusing because I told it to focus. So I think we're going to be going with this technique instead of this one. It's just going to be a lot easier to pull off and looks a little cleaner. So cool. All right, Internet, I've kept you for an hour if you did make it the whole way. So we're going to let you go with that. I'm going to, is the armature magnetic? It is. So I am just going to hang this guy up to dry. So he's just going to sit there, and then, yeah, I might do a little bit more magnetizing on my own. I might lay down and go to bed. I don't know. But I'll catch you tomorrow, and we'll pick this thing up and see where we're at. All right, Internet. Till next time. Kisses.